lives in a lovely neighborhood. If you live there, they say you're living good. Pretty lawns with fancy landscapes. She stares ahead with a blank gaze in her lovely neighborhood where the living is.
And good afternoon, and welcome to Reverse Your Thinking. I'm your host, Marc Gertz, and we've got some really interesting material to cover with you today. That intro song was the jazz and blues singer Angie Wells, who I understand recently just dropped a second single called There's Always Time for Loving. So please take a moment and go online and find her, Angie Wells, There's Always Time for Loving. So many of you know that the purpose of this show is to change the way you think, to take a contrarian view of things, to look at things from different perspectives. And boy, have I got a different perspective for you today. You may have heard the name Mark Mason in the past. He's a three-time #1 New York Times best-selling author. He sold over 20 million copies of his books. The most famous one is The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F. You'll fill in the rest of that word for yourself. And he recently wrote an article that I think is absolutely just brilliant, and I want to share it with you today. So for those of you listening, call your friends, tell them to get on the radio and listen to KMET, 1490 AM, 98.1 FM, and online streaming as well, because we've got a heck of a concept for you to wrap your heads around today. The title of this article is Why Being an Asshole Can Be a Valuable Life Skill. Yeah, that's right. You heard it. So just sit back and relax and set your clocks, because you're going to be here with me for a little while I explain this to you. So here we go. 80 years ago, researchers began one of the longest and most complicated projects to understand human behavior in history. It would take almost 50 years to complete, but their work would define an entire field of psychology. It started with an idea that people have different fundamental character traits, and these character traits are inherited and stable throughout one's life. It was the idea of personality. The problem was that there was an infinite number of human behaviors. So how could you know what was caused by someone's personality and what was caused by all the stuff going on around them? To test and find stable personality traits, researchers would have to make an exhaustive list of all of the possible human behaviors and then measure these behaviors in a lot of people over a very long time to determine what was fundamental personality and what was just noise and BS. The project started out humbly enough. In 1936, Gordon Allport and Henry Odbert pulled out a dictionary and went through every single entry, writing down any word that could potentially describe human behavior. Talk about a one-way ticket to Boresville, right? Well, this work was actually very important because our understanding of human behavior is bound by words. Therefore, to get a full sample of predefined human behavior, you have to go through the whole darn dictionary. In the end, they assembled a list of 4,500 words that describe all the crap humans do. Everything from fetishize to bootlicking were probably on the list. Well, that is if those words were in the dictionary back in 1936. The next project was to start going through the list and grouping them into a large category that encompassed as many words as possible. Words like talkative or wordly or loquacious, they could all be thrown under the word talkative, you see? Words like mopey or whiny and self-pitying could all be thrown under melancholy umbrella, and so on. This took almost 10 years to do. Then another psychologist named Raymond Cattell came along and passed on the first two guys' research, declared that there were 16 fundamental personality traits that defined all human behavior. But as time went on, it became clear that many of these traits came and went in people over time and or based on their circumstances. And other traits remained relatively constant over time. Each time a trait was observed to fluctuate too much, the psychologist threw it out. What was left in the 1960s was 5 stable traits: extroversion, openness to new experience, agreeableness, conscientiousness, and neuroticism. These 5 categories were deemed to be able to explain all of human behavior. But it would be another 20 years before they had sufficient research and data to back up this claim. When we come back, we're going to move further into this and into the 1990s. And I'm going to show you why it's possible to be profitable and be an asshole at the same time. And we're back, and I'm your host, Marc Gertz, and this is Reverse Your Thinking. Before the break, we were talking about the article by Mark Manson, Why Being an Asshole Can Be a Valuable Life Skill, and I'm going to pick up where I left off. The study that started in 1936 resulted by the 1990s in having data, and everyone threw a party. The point is, these 5 traits that I mentioned to you before the break, extroversion, openness to new experience, agreeableness, conscientiousness, and neuroticism, have since become known as the Big 5 personality traits. And they are one of the most established and scientifically driven measurements in the field of psychology, which, in case you haven't been paying attention, has very few established and scientifically driven measurements. The Big 5 are relatively stable over time. They persist through circumstance. There's a significant genetic component. In other words, you're born with a lot of this. They partially determine who you are and the choices you make and how well you're going to do in life. On average, extroverts experience more positive emotions, have wider social networks, and likely, as a result, make more money. People who are conscientious are healthier and live longer. People with high levels of neuroticism struggle emotionally and are more likely to lose jobs, get divorced, and become depressed. People who are more open to experience tend to be creative, risk-taking, and politically liberal. People who are low in openness to experience tend to be politically conservative. But out of all the Big 5 personality traits, one of the 5 stands above them all in determining professional success: agreeableness, or rather, a lack of agreeableness. Basically, assholes make more money, often a lot more money. Now, it's easy to lament that this is just more evidence of how messed up the world is and how the meanest and cruelest in our society are always the ones who get ahead. But I think that's a whiny and immature way to look at it. I mean, just because you're nice doesn't mean you're good. And just because someone is mean doesn't mean they're a bad person. In fact, I believe the world needs its fair share of assholes, and that being an asshole is a valuable life skill. What I mean by being an asshole is a willingness to be disliked and or to upset other people. As we will see, sometimes hurting someone's feelings or just being willing to hurt someone's feelings is a necessity, but both for ourselves and also for the greater good. And I believe that if more of us were able and willing to flip the asshole switch occasionally, the world might be a better place. So let's say you have 2 sides of a business deal. Let's also assume that this is a big, important business deal that will potentially generate a lot of money for all involved and is also good for the world, okay? Now, let's say that one side has learned the skill of being an asshole and the other side hasn't. That is, one side is totally willing to be disliked and the other is not. What's going to happen? Well, it's kind of obvious. The asshole is going to steamroll the other side and get a deal that heavily favors them. Run this situation millions of times over the course of multiple decades, and you end up in a situation where assholes run the world. No surprise. But let's run the experiment again with two non-assholes, two people unwilling to be disliked. Both sides come together, and instead of pushing for every small advantage for their side, they don't want to be assholes. So they agree to terms that are fine, but not terrific for themselves. The deal still gets done, but that deal will be less than perfect because neither side pushed to the full extent of their capabilities. Therefore, a lot of value will be lost in the process. In other situations, you get two non-assholes will fail to reach a deal because the initial offers on both sides will be so far off the mark, they won't want to push too hard to make the other side dislike them. Instead, both will kindly say, hey, I guess it's not going to work out, but no hard feelings. Let's go get a drink and play Yahtzee. And they will play Yahtzee. And they'll play it for play money because then they're going to be broke. The third situation is when two assholes come to a business negotiation, but both sides are totally willing to be disliked. And not only will they push for everything they need for the deal to be advantageous for them, they'll push even further. They will consciously antagonize the other side because they understand that antagonism wears people down and makes them capitulate more easily. Strangely, this really, really unpleasant circumstance is the one that will produce the most optimal results. We're going to take a break in a few minutes, and I'm going to introduce you to our special guest for this week, Rhonda Shear. She's going to talk to you about how to use LinkedIn in ways that you can't even imagine that you can use them to benefit you and your business and your success in this world, whether you're an asshole or not. So yes, assholes do run the world, but that's because in high stakes situations, being an asshole can be advantageous. Sometimes it's even useful for your boss to think that you're kind of an asshole. That's why he says you're an asshole, but you're his kind of asshole. We'll be right back after this. And we're back on Reverse Your Thinking. I'm your host, Marc Gertz, and I am very pleased to introduce you this week to our guest, Rhonda Shear. Rhonda is known as the LinkedIn Diva and is the author of 4 books. She's also a speaker, a connector, and a business network expert, a mentor, a wife, a mother, and she's recognized as one of the country's foremost experts on teaching entrepreneurs and business owners how to monetize LinkedIn. She's dedicated her life to empowering entrepreneurs, insurance financial professionals, and business owners, and women in particular, to position themselves as the only logical choice for their product or service, utilizing LinkedIn while creating authority and generating an endless supply of leads and referrals and eliminating the need to have to solicit people otherwise. Welcome, Rhonda. Thanks for coming to the show.
Hey, thanks, Mark. I'm really happy to be here. Love the beginning of the show. Fascinating stuff.
I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to our listeners coming back after our segment and hearing out the rest of it. You and I have known each other for a while, and we've actually worked together in helping me with my own LinkedIn and training my company on how to better use it as a tool. All right, and not thinking of it as an imposition. Can you give our listeners a little bit of background on you and how you got into this?
Yeah, I actually started my career, believe it or not, as a paralegal. I started out just working as a paralegal, then became a divorce mediator, and realized that I wasn't meant to have a job. I was a serial entrepreneur. And wrote a book on business networking. And when LinkedIn came out, to me, that was just a natural because using LinkedIn was very similar to what I did as a paralegal with LexisNexis. So the funny part of the story, Mark, is that life happens, and after excuse me, 28 years of marriage, I ended up getting a divorce. And at the same time, my mom passed away and the kids were empty nesting, all this kind of stuff. And I thought, oh my gosh, you know what? I need to really figure out a way that I can generate income. And so at that time, nobody was hiring speakers. So I went out, got my life insurance license, and I used LinkedIn. And within 6 weeks, I was generating $6,000 a month. Within a year, I was generating six figures. And I figured out two things. One, I hated selling life insurance. And two, I had a system that anybody could use to duplicate what I had done. So fast forward to 2016, which was about 6 years after I had gotten divorced, my husband and I ended up remarrying. And so we have our second anniversary. I like to say I have a husband and a husband. Didn't have to change my name and the kids are ours. But the funny part was when we got married again the second time, my husband said to me, I have only one request. I said, what's that? He said, please make more money than me. And believe it or not, using LinkedIn, Mark, I retired him from the corporate world in 2020. So for me, LinkedIn has just been this amazing tool that gives people an unfair advantage to be able to create relationships that really do convert to revenue.
Well, let me ask you this. Most of us don't think of LinkedIn when we think of doing search engine optimization or connecting online. We tend to think of like Facebook, or more of these social sites. Why LinkedIn in particular?
Well, first of all, the thing that's interesting is people are 2 times more likely to believe what they see on LinkedIn than any other site. And most people have never Googled themselves. But if you do a Google search on your name and you have a LinkedIn profile, there's a 70% or better chance that your LinkedIn profile is going to show up on the first page of Google. So imagine if people are 2 times more likely, and every second 2 new people are joining LinkedIn, with over 850 million people on this platform owned by Microsoft, why wouldn't you want to be there?
No, that makes perfect sense. Absolutely. The people that you'll contact, that you'll be in contact with on LinkedIn, is it the same as Facebook?
I'm not a big Facebook user, and I think that when we use LinkedIn, we use it a lot more strategically. So when you're reaching out to somebody on LinkedIn, whether it's somebody that you're already connected to or somebody that you want to be connected to, the information that you have on LinkedIn is vastly different than what you see on Facebook. You can see where they work, where they went to school, how to contact them, what other people have said, recommendations, projects. All of that is very chronological and organized in a way where on Facebook, you have to really work to find out about somebody. And most people don't even fill out their profiles.
Okay. Well, I have a tendency now to sort of talk about things and think about business in terms of pre-COVID and post-COVID, and a lot of things that maybe were not so true prior to 2020 now are more true than ever. What is having a currently optimized LinkedIn profile? What is there any more particular value to that now than there was prior to 2020?
There actually is. And you make a great point, in terms of what the world was like before COVID and after, because the reality is that we're checking people out much more carefully. We have learned, and I hate to use the word pivot, but it's true. We really have learned to be effective online. And when we are online, whether we're having our meetings on Zoom or whatever it is that we're doing, the first thing that we want to do is check somebody out. So where do you go to do that? LinkedIn. And that's where you get to find all that information. And, even things like, where do you volunteer, right? I'll never forget, I was having a conversation with somebody looking at their LinkedIn profile, and I saw that they were a mentor for big brothers and big sisters. That was in
Mm,
their profile. And at the time, my younger daughter was actually working for Big Brothers Big Sisters. And so I said to this gentleman, I said, "Wow, you're a mentor for Big Brothers Big Sisters? My daughter works for them. In fact, she's doing the annual fundraiser." And the first thing he said to me was, "Give me her link. I want to make a donation." And oh my, well, in mom points, I like really went up. But the good part was that I found a way to create instant rapport with a complete stranger simply by looking at something that we shared in common, which was an affinity for, Big Brothers Big Sisters.
hmm Well, that's kind of interesting because I know I've always thought, and a lot of people have said to me that they think of LinkedIn as being just for business people, and that it's all business. It's not social like Facebook. But what you're talking about now sounds like it has a big social component to it.
Well, here's the thing, people do business with people they like, know, and trust. And we create relationships. You and I met, we created a relationship out of a networking group,
hmm
and then we began to work together.
hmm
So on LinkedIn, yes, it's a business platform, but it's still two people working together. And one of the things that I like to do on LinkedIn, and I share this with clients, is share a little bit of personal information on LinkedIn. Now, I'm not talking about what you had for lunch or whatever, but
Right.
great example. You talked about a book that I have never heard of, put a great slant on it. Why not put that in a post on LinkedIn and then put a question that says, "Well, who do you know that falls into the category of asshole that you like?"
hmm
Right? I mean, it's a fun post, but it's business related, right?
hmm
So you
Yeah.
can really marry the two. Another way is I posted about 3 months ago. I found this very cool video of a flight attendant who was taking the instructions, which are usually so boring. And this guy made it so much fun, and somebody caught it on camera. So I took that snip, put it on LinkedIn, and I asked a question.
Mm.
Do you have fun at work? That post got 2 million views. It got reshared about 1,500 times, and the number of likes was over 15,000. That had nothing to do with LinkedIn. I was just asking, do you have fun at work? So you can really meld the two, but do it in a very professional way and still tie it back to business.
That's an amazing response to a simple question in a picture. Do you what what would you say would be the picture to word ratio? Let me put that a different way. How important are pictures on LinkedIn?
Pictures are very important, and video really is king.
Uh-huh.
Video has really become so front and center. So whether it's a video of you, right, having a conversation about this great subject, that we're talking about,
hmm
or maybe it's just a video that you found somewhere and that you want to share, it's how you put the twist on it. So for you, your marketing is so unique with reverse your thinking. You could put that to anything. And when you tie it to mortgages, it really is a great tie, right?
hmm
Well, what if you found a video that maybe kind of fit in with how somebody might reverse their thinking, right?
hmm
I put a little video up the other day of a little kid who happened to be in a store, saw a mannequin and thought it was a real other little kid and walked up, and you can see the video on my LinkedIn profile, and literally gave the mannequin a kiss on the cheek because couldn't differentiate whether it was a real child or it was a mannequin. So my post really said, how many times have you actually been fooled, right, into thinking someone or somebody was real, and in fact it wasn't what it appeared. And
hmm
so it invited conversation, it invited people to engage.
This wasn't something you photographed with your phone. This is something you reposted, I gather.
All I did was basically just screen capture it and then repost it on LinkedIn.
Gotcha.
But you can do
Gotcha.
it with your phone, sure.
Yeah, no, I get it. No, I just figured you wouldn't necessarily have been there exactly at that moment when he kissed the mannequin. That's why I was
Oh, no, it
asking.
wasn't my video. I was just sharing it. No,
Right.
no, it wasn't me.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, can you share with us some of the best ways to generate business using LinkedIn if someone only wanted to spend, oh, I don't know, let's say 30 minutes a day. Okay.
So
If
let's,
somebody,
yeah,
because um, the biggest hesitancy that I hear people say is, oh, I haven't got 3 hours to spend, doing LinkedIn. Can you do it in 30 minutes a day? What does that look like?
you can. And as long as you have a good optimized profile, right? It basically tells people who you are, what you do, how they can reach you. If you have that, you can do it in less than 30 minutes. First thing that you want to do is you want to engage with other people's posts. So I know you do a lot of really good posting. It's really liking your post and commenting on it and maybe resharing it, as well as posting yourself. So you want to post a minimum of 3 times a week. Best time to post between 8 and 10 a.m., right?
Mm-hmm.
That's probably the best time. The other way that you can really generate some real traction on LinkedIn is we all have a lot of first level connections. But the truth is, most of us don't know them. They're kind of like those
Mm-hmm.
first cousins that you never knew you had.
Uh-huh.
Well, what if you sent somebody a message, even a video message or an audio message or even a type message, and it would say something like, "Hey, Mark, we've been connected since," and LinkedIn tells you how long you've been connected, and never really had a conversation. I wanted to wish you a happy new year. Hope 2023 is off to a great start. And I'd love to just jump on a call, see how we might support each other. And I promise we'll keep it in the no sale zone. If this sounds good, I'll drop a link to my calendar. The reality of that is you're re-engaging the people that you've already connected to, and you
Mm-hmm.
have a conversation with them. That's how you can really make LinkedIn work for you. And look, how long does it take if you're cutting and pasting that message or doing a video, sending it out, putting the calendar link? You can go through other people's posts pretty quickly, post your own, especially if you have them all set ahead of time,
Mm-hmm.
and then just reach out to a couple of people. 30 minutes and you can have a full calendar all day long.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. Um, well, let me ask you this. You mentioned that we met in a networking group, and one of the things that I've noticed about those groups is they tend to be um, run by people who are extroverts. And you might have heard in the article that I was reading before that that's one of the 5 main personality traits is extrovert, being an extrovert. But many of our listeners aren't. Many of our listeners, identify themselves as introverts, and many of those people have small businesses, they're self-employed, um, that they're working in professions that they don't have that much direct contact with people, and they're not naturally inclined to create those connections. But at the same token, they need those connections in order to survive in business and to thrive. Um, is there anything that you can suggest for those people that are more introverted that they can do, utilize LinkedIn to, without sort of, taking them too far out of their comfort zone?
Yeah, and that's a great question because there are a lot of introverts. And when you look at somebody's LinkedIn profile, okay, you read it a little bit differently than you might. So what you really want to look at in that profile is, well, where do they volunteer? What organizations do they belong to? What can you learn about that person? And then you start the conversation just asking open-ended questions. So I might look at your profile if I didn't know you and say, Mark, how did you come up with reverse your thinking? That's such a unique way to think about reverse mortgages, right?
Hmm.
That's an open-ended question. And I'm just asking you to tell me about you. So if I'm the introvert, I'm just making you the person of interest, right? And whatever you're going to say, I'm really going to listen intently and I'm going to ask follow up questions. So it's a one to one. It's not like you're in this huge room and you're the wallflower.
Hmm.
So whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, my recommendation is look at the LinkedIn profile in a way where you can find something that you share in common. It's almost impossible to not find that you share a common connection, or maybe somebody went to a college and your best friend went to that school,
Hmm.
or somebody wrote a recommendation and you go, "Oh, I know that person." So all you have to be able to do is find commonality. And being an introvert, ask an open-ended question, and the person on the other end, they're
Hmm.
going to want to share.
Hmm. Well, well, when we come back, what I want to talk about first is how you can help somebody like that in terms of designing their LinkedIn profile to make it easier for them to be able to reach out, or maybe even create situations where people reach out to them so that they don't have to necessarily make the first step. Is that okay? Can we do
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. And I'll share a couple of easy ways you can make that happen.
Great, great. And maybe you can also explain to us how you can help somebody make that happen too. Okay? Is that all right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Great. Okay. All right. Well, we are talking to Rhonda Shear. She is the LinkedIn diva. She is an author of 4 books, and she is sharing pearls of wisdom. And we're going to be right back to share more of those pearls of wisdom right after this message. And we're back on Reverse Your Thinking. I'm your host, Marc Gertz, and we're talking to our guest today, Rhonda Shear, the LinkedIn diva. And before the break, I was asking Rhonda about those of us that are introverts, and how she helps them to design their LinkedIn's to best optimize those type of relationships. Rhonda, can you give us a little insight into that?
Yeah. So, one of the things that most people forget about on LinkedIn is your headline. And what LinkedIn does as a default on your headline is it basically just puts your job title, right? But what if you put keywords in there? So let me give you an example. One of my clients is a handwriting expert. In fact, she's one of 5 people in the country that has the designations that of what she
Wow.
does. And she couldn't understand why these attorneys weren't calling her. And so once I optimized her profile, the next week, she had 2 attorneys reach out to her because they put in the right keywords and they found her. And they were looking for an expert witness who could do exactly what she does. So a lot of people will use this, think of it like Google. If I'm looking for a reverse mortgage specialist that's
Hmm.
in Los Angeles that works very well with financial advisors, chances are you're going to come up because of the way that you're positioned. So it works both ways. People will find you, and you will also be able to find them.
Gotcha. So there's no exclusion with LinkedIn. There's no requirement that you be a hardcore extrovert, or that you be totally social or share every single picture of every dinner that you have with people or anything like that.
No, in fact, it's the keywords that are the most important.
Keywords.
And using your about section to tell your story, because
Okay.
you
Can
want to tell people who you are.
mhm. Explain that to us for a moment. Keywords for those who are uninitiated. What does that mean exactly?
So let's use you as an example. Your keywords are reverse mortgage, and you're in Los Angeles, correct?
Hmm.
So if I was looking for a reverse mortgage specialist in Los Angeles, and you're also considered a trusted advisor,
Hmm.
those are the keywords that I would put in. I would put them in my headline. I would put them in my about section. I would put
Hmm.
them in my experience section. And the more that they're there
Hmm.
strategically, the higher the odds are that people are going to find you. So if there is a financial advisor who wants to work with somebody that knows how to work with financial advisors in a reverse mortgage, there's a very high chance that they'll find you before
Hmm.
they'll find somebody else that doesn't have those words in their profile.
Okay, so let me ask you a question, since we're using me as the guinea pig right now. Okay, I'm also licensed in the state of Florida, but I'm domiciled in Los Angeles, in California. How would I use keywords in LinkedIn in order to generate interest in me by attorneys and financial advisors in Florida?
So not only would you put that in your about section that you're licensed, but here's a little trick. Add a new experience section to your profile that says you're licensed in Florida, and then put the description. And if you want to get your phone to ring, Mark, with people in Florida, add that as if it's a new position. So now you've been doing this all along. You've been in Florida, but you've never had that on your profile specifically identifying that, right? So now you add a new position. Like I recently did that with mine. I was offering a new course and I added it as if I have a new job. I don't have a new job. I just have a new offering, right? So you now have basically, you're doing reverse mortgages in Florida. So you add that to your profile. That goes out and you're going to start getting a lot of people that are going to congratulate you. They're going to go, Mark, congratulations on your new position. Well, you don't really have a new position. You're just at, but
Sure.
it gives you an opportunity to respond to all those folks to say, hey, thanks so much. It's actually not a new job, but I wanted to make people aware that I'm really expanding my practice to Florida. By the way, if you'd like to jump on a call, if there's any way we can support each other. So it's a way to get the people coming towards you.
I see. I see. Well, that's very interesting. That's very interesting. Um, so you staying on that topic for a moment, would there be any advantage in those situations by getting a separate phone number? Do you feel an 800 number, or that wouldn't matter at all?
No, it's not that. The one thing that I do recommend though is either use an office number or get a Google phone number or a Grasshopper number. Don't put your personal cell phone number on your LinkedIn profile.
Uh-huh.
Be accessible and make sure that the outgoing voicemail that you have tells people what you do. So, mine might be, hi, you've reached Rhonda Sure. If you're somebody that's in the LinkedIn Witness Protection Program, tired of hiding out and want to start standing out, please leave me a message with your best number and I will get back to you, blah, 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 right? It's a mini commercial because I've learned from my mentors, the person that makes the call wins, not the person that answers the phone.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Well, okay, so we're talking about all the wonderful things that people can do to maximize LinkedIn for themselves. What would you say are some of the common mistakes that people make using LinkedIn?
Oh my gosh. How much time do we have? I mean,
We've got plenty of time. Go ahead.
so the first one is the headshot. Okay. You can't even believe how many people will have a photo of two people and then they cut the other person off. Or, it's their high school graduation or it's 10 years old. It doesn't even look like that person. So make sure you have a really good headshot. The other mistake that I see is in the contact information. They don't list their website, or if they do, it's the wrong one. They don't have a way to reach them through email. There's no phone number. It's like, you're asking me to do business with you and I have no way to contact you. So make sure the
Gotcha.
contact information is current. The other mistake that I see is the one the one word that I see all the time in the about section is I. And the truth is, nobody cares about you until they know what you can do for them. So make sure that the about section is written very client centric. So it lets people know what you can do for them and it has a specific call to action.
Gotcha. Um, we're running out of time before the break. Can you stay on for a couple of minutes after the break?
Absolutely.
Terrific, because I want to give our listeners a chance to know how to get in touch with you, but I also want to ask you about the difference between premium versions and free versions of LinkedIn. So we'll be back shortly after this from our sponsors.
My sound is okay, right?
Much better.
Okay, good. Yeah, I
Yep.
just wanted to keep the mic close.
Yep. So we'll just touch on those two things. We'll just touch on the premium versus free versions quickly. All right.
Yep.
And then I'll give you a chance to give contact information.
Cool.
All right. And we're back on Reverse Your Thinking. We're talking to LinkedIn diva Rhonda Shear. Rhonda, explain to our audience what's the difference between spending a couple of bucks for premium LinkedIn versus the free version? What are the advantages?
The advantage, well, there's two versions of premium. There is either premium or Sales Navigator. With both of them, you do have the advantage of seeing who's looked at your profile. And that's actually kind of a big deal because not only does it tell you who looked at your profile, but it tells you when they looked at it. So that's one advantage. The other is with Sales Navigator. And Sales Navigator is $99 a month, but it allows you to save searches and send in-mails, which really means if I'm going to send you a message, it goes directly into your email. It doesn't get lost in cyberspace. And you can save searches, and there's so many filters that you can use. So if you're serious about wanting to create those relationships and wanting to use a tool that's going to make it easier for you, Sales Navigator is the way to go for sure.
Sounds great. Well, for those of our listeners who really don't want to do all of this for themselves, how can they get in contact with you and talk to you about consulting with them and helping them to put this together on LinkedIn?
Well, they can go to thesuremethod.com, which is a landing page, or they can also go to my LinkedIn profile, which is the easiest way to get there is LinkedIn Rhonda, RHONDA.com, which will direct you to my profile. And you'll see there's a little button there that says Network with Rhonda. And that will take you to my calendar link and a little 10-question information that will tell me about you. And then you'll get the information back. So either way, either go to LinkedInRhonda.com or the Sure Method. And it's a sure way to stay out of the LinkedIn Witness Protection Program.
Sounds terrific. Thank you so much for being with us today. You've shared amazing pearls of wisdom, and we really appreciate having you on here. And we certainly look forward to having you back at another time. Okay?
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate it.
Our pleasure. Absolutely. Before Rhonda came on as our guest, we were talking about the Mark Mason article, why being an asshole can be a valuable life skill. And we're going to finish up the show summarizing some of that. So the answer to that question is the more important something is, the higher the stakes. The higher the stakes, the more emotionally involved people are going to be with the outcome. The more emotionally involved people are with the outcome, the more difficult it'll be to upset someone or tell them something they don't want to hear. Therefore, the more important something is, the more valuable it is to be able to crap in someone's mouth if necessary. I know that sounds harsh, but if you care more about the way other people feel than in accomplishing your goals, you're going to have a hard time accomplishing them. So, this doesn't mean that you should always be an asshole. That's not what Mark Mason's trying to say. It simply means that it's often important to be able to be willing to hurt someone's feelings or stand up for what's right, even if it's unpleasant. This is an uncelebrated skill, folks. It's a skill that we look down on as a society and a culture because it's unpleasant. But it's a necessary part of the world. That is, assuming the asshole has a code of ethics. Now, how to be an ethical asshole, that's the important thing. We know plenty that aren't, but how to be an ethical one. When we think of people like that we don't like, we think of people who are unethical. They lie, cheat, or steal to get their way. That's not what we're trying to do here. Yes, there is such a thing as an ethical asshole. And I would argue ethical assholes are national treasures. We need them because they're the only thing saving us from the unethical ones. So assuming you're ethical, how does one become more of an asshole? Well, let's take a moment and look at that. All right. As we've established, some people are born with this skill. Some people are just naturally very disagreeable. They think people are pretty lousy in general, so they don't care if people don't like them. But for those who are agreeable, learning to be an asshole is a skill that must be practiced, the same way an introvert must practice using extroverted skills when necessary. The agreeable person must learn to be disagreeable when necessary, lest they get walked over. So here are a few steps to becoming more of an asshole. Number one, decide what's more important than other people's feelings. Most people let their life be dictated by their feelings, both their own and others. They don't even realize this because they haven't stopped to think about it. But if you allow your life to be dictated by feelings, you're going to be stuck in a hole forever. The key to developing the willingness to upset other people is to understand what's more important than them being upset. Unethical assholes are assholes because they care about themselves more than others. They are narcissistic and they see the world only in terms of what benefits them. Obviously, that's bad. They are unethical because their cause is bad. Finding a good cause beyond one's own interests is the first step in becoming ethical as an asshole. Number two, get good at feeling bad. I want you to listen to me here. This is important. Most people are too nice. They think that they're nice because they care too much about other people's feelings. They say to themselves, well, I could never say that to her because she'll feel bad. But they're lying to themselves. They think they're being altruistic, but they're not. They don't want to say it to her because they'll make themselves feel bad. So, folks, the number one thing you have to remember, all right, if you're going to defend your own position and be a good ethical asshole, is you have to be prepared to feel bad when you hurt other people's feelings. But in the long run, this will be beneficial to them and beneficial to you. If you want to hear more about this, look up Mark Mason online and read his full article about why being an asshole can be a valuable life skill. I hope you'll take a look at this from a new point of view, from a reverse your thinking point of view, and that you'll use it to improve the quality of your life. My name is Marc Gertz. You've been listening to Reverse Your Thinking on KMET, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening.
Where the living is good.